Okay, in this video things are going to get a little personal because I'm talking about why retro games are so important to me. Now, the thing you got to understand about my history with video games is that I actually spent a huge chunk of time not playing games. When I was in college, I pretty much didn't play games at all, and up to that point, before that point, I really only played what was modern. And then when I got out of college, that's when I really started to look into retro games and really get into them big time. So getting back into these older games, one of the things that I distinctly remember is that there was a learning curve associated with playing these older games. I mean, I hadn't played like Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo type stuff since I was a kid, and you know, back in the early 90s, back when they were the current thing. And so it was like, oh yeah, this is what games used to be like. I mean, it was a huge eye-opener for me. And so the funny thing is, it actually initially it was not clicking with me. I was not enjoying it. There's a lot of things you got to get used to when you've been accustomed to playing stuff like, you know, it was the Xbox 360, PS3 era at the time, you know, getting towards the end of that era when I started playing these older games. And, you know, you got to get used to stuff like how game over actually means game over. It doesn't mean you get to just start right where you just died. Things like that. The difficulty is obviously a huge thing. And just the way the games play, you know, they're in general a lot more linear, like go from here to here. And, you know, the 2D style is much different than how things were. It was a big adjustment. So anyways, the reason why I bring this up is that if there was that learning curve for someone like me that I had to get past and work through in order to enjoy these games, because it did eventually click, obviously, and it clicked big time. It's like my favorite thing ever now. It made me think, you know, a lot of people would have to go through this learning curve in order to enjoy the games. I know there's gamers out there who have just been playing video games their whole life and have always had their collection of, you know, all the older systems. They never sell them off or get rid of them or move on to the next thing, or, you know, stuff like that. But it just made me think, like, man, there's definitely people out there who would enjoy these games if they were just willing to give them the chance. And it's not as simple as just sitting down with the game and playing it. You actually need to train your brain to think differently in order to enjoy these games once you've become so used to the way modern games play. Another thing that I was noticing when I was getting back into these games is that I was really benefiting from giving games and systems a chance that I had just dismissed when I was younger. You know, you just, maybe because you can't afford them or you whatever. And so I was really enjoying these games and systems. I mean, some of my favorite games now, my favorite retro games, are stuff I did not grow up with. So I mean, I know that the whole nostalgia argument is a big thing that people make, but for me, for some of these games, there's no nostalgia at all. It's just, man, these are awesome games that I love to play. And I'm not saying that it would click for everybody the way it did for me, and, you know, certainly not the way it did for me, where it just turned into this almost like an obsession where I just couldn't stop learning more and more about, you know, what people thought of different games and the different perspective, and I just really deep dove into retro games big time to where I feel like I know almost everything now. I mean, not like some of the historical stuff that I maybe don't care about, and you know, obviously there's people who know more than me, but my point is, I feel like I know so much about them now. My perspective has just changed so much, and I know that if that happened to me, it could absolutely happen to other people, and they could get into retro games as a result of it. And the other thing is that because I had that huge learning curve and had to come over that huge barrier, and I was trying things that I had not played when I was a kid, it made me think, you know, there's objective reasons why these games are really good. It's not just the nostalgia. I mean, like I said, some of my favorite games are games I didn't grow up with. And so I think there's absolutely objective reasons as to why retro games are better than modern games, or, you know, at least different enough to be worth playing in addition to modern games. Of course, that's what I do. I play both modern and retro games. And I think another reason why the retro games are so important is that if retro games are important, then it gives video games as a whole a history and kind of validates them a little more. You know, where it's something that's not just the flavor of the month. It's something with a history that people enjoy. Plus, there's a lot of really concerning trends in modern gaming. That could be an entire video of its own. But anyways, I think that modern games could really afford to take inspiration from retro games, and not just in the form of remakes and remasters and reboots and stuff like that. Not that I don't appreciate those are some of my most favorite modern games actually, but the inspiration needs to come in the form of game design and creativity and, you know, making new intellectual properties, making new games, new stuff for us to get excited about. Anyways, those are my thoughts, but of course I'd like to hear what all of you have to say. I know I said a lot in this video, but I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts. So leave those comments down below, and I will see ya in the next video.